Welcome to Capturing Kenosha Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Barlow. We created Capturing Kenosha Podcast to promote the natural and architectural beauty found in Kenosha County by featuring the pictures of local photographers. Each episode, we'll be joined by a local photographer who will share their expertise and passion for photography in Kenosha. Today on Capturing Kenosha Podcast, we will be talking to Chris Eyerly. Chris will be leading one of our learning communities this summer. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited to have you here. I got into photography because of you, so I'm super excited to have you as our guest this morning. I'm just kind of curious. Tell us about how you got into photography.
Well, it was quite a number of years ago when my oldest child, and actually all three children were in gymnastics, and I wanted to be able to take some good photos of them, and I knew it was difficult because gyms were poorly lit. You know, they were relatively fast action. I mean, as fast action in gymnastics as 7 and 8 year olds are, and I knew it was going to be tough. So after they were in gymnastics for a little while, I bought my first camera, which was a Canon T6i way back in the day, and bought a lens and tried to figure it out, and it was an experience and a journey from there.
So approximately how long you been taking pictures?
That would be 12 years or so.
Okay.
So
I would have guessed more actually, but
maybe more, maybe 15.
That's fine. And so what do you shoot with right now?
I have two cameras, a Canon EOS R, so their first kind of full frame mirrorless, and then a Canon M6 Mark II. So that's a crop sensor.
And so what do you enjoy most about taking pictures?
For me, it's the aspect of being able to see something and then, capture it in a way that is enjoyable to look at afterwards, right? Something that means something that is an art form of sorts. So
do you err on the side of art, or are you more technical? So I guess I'm saying, do you have a look for more of the eye of the picture, or?
So by my nature, I'm much more technical when it comes to photography. I don't necessarily have the greatest eye for framing things or the artistic piece of it. So when I do grab something that is, quite artistic looking, I'm pretty proud of it, just because that's not in my nature who I am. I'm an engineer by trade. I do a lot of the technical work, but I enjoy the aspect of creating something that can be hung on the wall as a piece of art.
And so do you enjoy getting shots off by yourself, or are you more someone that likes to shoot with other people and gather with a bunch of other photographers?
I like both. So it does depend on the situation. Locally, I prefer shooting with other people because it's common places, it's common objects, common subjects, and that sort of thing. So shooting with others to always get like a fresh view is something that I like. But at the same time, like when we did a family vacation to Washington, D.C., there was one evening where the family was tired. We had already walked like 4 miles that day, and I strapped all my camera gear on my back and went out for like 2.5 hours and just took pictures around D.C. by myself. And I enjoyed that because it was a new experience, and I didn't have the kind of the pressure of moving on to the next thing because somebody else wanted to move on. I could just really sit there and focus on what I wanted to take. So for me, it really does depend on the environment as far as whether I like to shoot by myself or with a group.
Now, I know you've kind of gone to Canada. I think it was Vancouver.
I've been to Calgary and Newfoundland.
Oh, it's not even close, but that's all right. But I know you've gone there on business work trips.
Yep.
And taken a lot of pictures when you have some free time, and really enjoyed that, and I loved seeing those pictures. Is there a type of photography that you like? Is it landscape, wildlife, all of it?
Yeah, I don't do much wildlife, though. I think it'd be fun. I just don't have the lenses to get that done effectively. I like landscapes. I like cityscapes, street photography of sorts. That sort of thing is really where I really enjoy things. I have done like senior portraits and things like that. They aren't necessarily my favorite. Posing subjects is a difficult task for me, and that's not something it's not one of the things I enjoy the most. But I have done it, and at least some of them have come out decently enough. So,
well, I know when I did a wedding of one time, I had you come along, and that was immensely helpful because doing your first wedding, you kind of are lost, and you were a ton of help, and I appreciate that. And like I said earlier, I wouldn't even be in photography if it wasn't for you. In fact, our whole staff, it basically takes pictures because you started us on that, and I appreciate that. But why do you enjoy encouraging others to take pictures or to take up the hobby?
We're in a photo heavy society now. Everybody has a cell phone, everybody has a camera, but so much of what we take is just lost nowadays, where you have 1,000 pictures on your camera roll on your phone. People enjoy being able to capture those moments, and those who really want to and learn how to do it differently with a full camera where they can choose lenses and make the decisions that they want and shoot in manual mode, they can then take something that they're more proud of than just something as a quick memory, something that they can be proud to hang on the wall, be proud to give to others. One of the YouTubers that I follow, and I know he's got a little controversy, is Jared Polin, Frono's Photo. And he always talks about the gift of photography. And when you watch his YouTube channel enough, you see that he's always giving away the pictures. Like he's taking pictures of people and then, printing it out. Now, obviously he has the funds to do that and he gets sponsored and all those sorts of things. But it's about the gift of photography. It's about the gift of being able to give a photo that's not just a quick snapshot off a phone. Not that you can't take great photos with a phone, but there's so much more control that you have when you use a full camera and are, shooting in manual mode or at least fully understand what the camera is doing and why it's doing it.
Well, speaking of manual mode and using the camera's different options, you're going to be teaching a class this summer. Why don't you explain what that class is called, what you're going to kind of be doing, and when it's going to happen?
Sure. So it's called Mastering Manual Mode, parentheses for beginners. And we're going to go over really the first parts of shooting in manual. So that is going to be, things like the exposure triangle, ISO, aperture, shutter speed. We're going to go over all of that, how they affect each other, what that means for overall exposure. And then we're going to do some hands-on picture taking in the class. So that way people can understand why the camera is doing what it's doing and why they would want that control versus just letting the camera make the decision on auto mode.
So would you say this is for beginners or for people that have been taking pictures for a long time?
It's really for anybody who's struggled with manual mode, struggled to understand it, struggled to know why to use it, or struggled to effectively use it when they've tried.
So why is manual mode so important?
It's really about the creative aspect of the photos. So the camera is going to make decisions based on what it thinks is best when you're in auto mode. So it doesn't know when you're on a tripod and when you're not. The camera doesn't know when the subject is moving fast and when it's not. The camera doesn't understand that there's it kind of understands that there's like a really bright spot and a dark spot in the frame, but it doesn't know what you want to focus on in there. So the camera just doesn't know everything. And so it makes the best decision it can, but oftentimes that decision is not the decision that you would want if you were, choosing the control over all those aspects. So manual mode allows you to do that. It allows you to take control of things like depth of field, which we'll cover in the class, or shutter speed. You want, long exposures, or maybe you don't really want a long exposure, but you want to capture movement in a specific way. Those are all things that you're not going to be able to effectively do in auto mode. Every once in a while you'll get lucky and the camera will make a decision that is good, but overall you really want that control yourself.
And having control over those different options like ISO and aperture and all that kind of stuff, it really frees you up to be able to be as creative as you want in the different kinds of settings, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're taking portraits, you're going to think about things one way. When you're shooting landscapes, it's going to be something completely different. And yes, there's the auto modes where you can change it to landscape mode or change it to portrait mode on a lot of the cameras. And it's going to make slightly better decisions in those modes, but still it's not really truly shooting what you want. And there's examples. I was out in Seattle a number of years ago visiting a friend, and I was out on the one of the capes there, and I was technically shooting landscape, which would normally be a high aperture because you want a lot more in focus. But there was a cool log with a flower on it and that sort of thing. So I actually, went to a much faster aperture because I wanted more depth of field. I didn't go all the way wide open, but I didn't want the kind of infinity kind of focus feel that you get on a lot of landscapes. I did want some depth of field in there in order to focus on this, this log that was on the beach and that sort of thing. So you still make decisions differently, even if you're in landscape mode or whatever. And, is it my best picture I've ever taken? Not at all. But it was a choice I was making at the time because I wanted to see how it would work out.
Yeah. Trying those different things just to see what happens is one of the best parts of taking pictures, is especially nowadays without film, you can just delete and be like, that was a fail, moving on.
Well, and you can actually have that feedback right away. You can look at it on the screen and kind of see how it looks. Even shooting in manual mode, there's things that I can think of instances. I was taking pictures of a fire truck for a mutual friend of ours, and long story there, but the pictures turned out well. I was doing some kind of artsy shots or like down the side of the fire truck with certain things in focus and that kind of stuff. And I liked how they turned out overall, but when I got back and put them on a big screen instead of my little camera screen, I'm like, yeah, that focus point should have been 8 inches further, to the right, or
every time almost.
Or I should have, I should have made this adjustment there. So even the instant feedback isn't perfect, but it's a lot better than not having it. And you just learn from all those things, right? So next time you go and shoot something like that, like I have that in my memory bank now, right? And I can go and, okay, I'm going to take a shot kind of like that, but I want the focus point to be, further forward on the subject or further back on the subject or however it may be.
Yeah, I just took a picture of a senior in his last baseball game, and I had him sitting on a chair facing the field, like looking like at the field as if it's the last time you ever saw it. And I thought it was a great picture. And then I put it back on my computer, and it was focused on the wrong thing, and it just ruined the whole picture. And I was like, man, that stinks.
It happens all the time. But I would say my keeper rate when shooting manual and making those decisions is higher than just shooting on auto, right? When I shoot on auto, there's a little bit of the spray and pray kind of thing, and that's not what I enjoy. I enjoy the technical aspects of the photo, but then also trying to make that work in something that is going to be enjoyable for others to see as well.
Yeah, because there'll be a lot of people who say, why don't you just take a picture with your cell phone? Because they're really good right now.
They are.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But what makes it fun or more enjoyable even to take a picture with a DSLR or some
a mirrorless or
mirrorless,
something.
Yeah.
Lens choice is a huge part of it for me. I was doing the DC trip, right? I had my 16-35 with me as well as my 70-200. For those who aren't familiar with lens choices, that's the focal length. And was able to take some really like cool night shots of like the Capitol building, and on a tripod, long exposure, doing some things there, and I was able to do that and choose between my lenses. So I think one of those I actually stepped further away and was shooting on my 70-200, but I was shooting like the Capitol building, which is huge,
yes,
right? But there were some choices I was making there with how I wanted that to look. So some things we won't be getting into in class is, you've got things like compression when you go longer focal lengths and just different view of how things look. So it's a whole nother class. But there's things about the 16-35 wide angle that I didn't really like about that shot. So you're shooting on the mall, right? So I had the chance to step away and step further back and just use the choices that I had. So for me, cameras a lot of it's about lens choice. And then the other thing is just there's a lot more powerful in editing. I always shoot in RAW. And so I have a lot more power in the edit as far as dynamic range, pulling out shadows, and I try to take a fairly journalistic approach to editing where I don't want to do a ton of manipulation where like I'm adding a different sky or doing that sort of thing. I want to try and make the photo look as dynamic as it looks in real life.
Right.
Sometimes you go past that a little bit for an artistic look or something like that. But my personal choice is to try and keep it as like, what does the eye see, and how do I edit this photo so that way it looks like what the eye saw?
Yeah. I think there's so many different styles, and there's nothing wrong with any of the styles. I lean exactly kind of like you. What I see is what I want to kind of portray. Now there are instances and different types, like the auroras. They're not as vibrant, so I give a little more color to them, but I don't try to make them look like unreal or something that was just made up AI. But I totally understand that. One of the things that when I first began, I was super frustrated with was not understanding the exposure triangle. And I actually took a class. I don't remember what the class was called or who was even by. It was over by Wendy's on Sheridan. And I'd give her a shout out if I remembered her name. But we sat there and worked through the exposure triangle. And once I went out and practiced, taking pictures became so much easier. And so explain kind of why the exposure triangle is so important.
Well,
briefly.
Yeah, not to take up the whole class here. Ultimately, taking photos is about capturing light. And the exposure triangle is what allows you to do that. But the light is kind of in three forms, right? So there's the shutter speed, so there's how fast you're capturing the light. There's the aperture, how much light you're capturing. And then there's the ISO, which is really going to be how sensitive the camera is to the light that you captured. That's, the rough definitions there. And so you want to make sure that you're capturing the light in a way that portrays what it is that you're taking a photo of, that portrays the subject. And having full control over all three of those aspects and understanding how they interact, right? If I'm setting the aperture to let less light in, then I need to compensate for that some way, right? I either need to make it more sensitive to the light, or I need to make it so that way the shutters open longer, so that way more light comes in over time. It's that relationship that we'll explore in the class, and understanding how to make those changes between them when you decide, I want shallow depth of field. What does that mean? How do I change my aperture to accomplish that? And also there's a little bit of like, how do you move your subject to accomplish that, right? I could want shallow depth of field of taking a picture of you, but if you're 6 inches away from the background, then it's only going to get so shallow, right? Because you're not far enough away from background there. So there's a lot of different aspects that we'll cover. But yeah, that's the main thing. It's about capturing light and the relationship between those three things, and how do you capture the light appropriately. Yeah.
And once you start to master those three things, then you can really start to become a lot more technical. There's a lot more avenues you can go down, or different strategies, or I guess I'm blanking on a word that I'm looking for, but just a lot more things that your camera can do that allows you to be more creative. Would that be a different class then?
Yeah, so you're talking about like framing and things like metering and exposure, and like there's a lot of different technical parts to the camera. I look at it like compared to like a musician, guitar players or piano players. There's a lot of technical skill that goes into playing piano properly or playing guitar properly. But when you do that enough, and that skill becomes something that is more second nature, something that
Correct, yes.
you can that just happens. Not that you don't have to keep practicing it, but there's muscle memory. There's things that just you're doing that form properly because you've practiced it for so long. Then you can focus on the art of the music. You can making sure that the emotion is there and that music is portrayed appropriately. It's very much the same thing with photography. You want to learn the technical aspects of it and how to control those to a point where they're second nature, right? You don't have to think, okay, I want to change my aperture, so what's my button that I got to go and do that with, and what I got to do? No, you change the aperture, your thumb slides over, hits a thing, you've now changed the aperture, and your finger spins the shutter speed, and you're good to go, and it's all just automatic. It's to the point where that's just part of the processing. Because really the focus should be on the subject and how are you framing the subject and how are you capturing something that brings about some sort of emotion in the picture, whether that just be a simple enjoyment from a nice landscape to something more awe-inspiring, whatever you're trying to draw out of that subject. But you want the technical aspects to be nailed down so that way you can focus on the subject and the framing and how all that works. A great example of how technology does help with that is things like autofocus on mirrorless cameras.
Absolutely.
So now when you're taking portraits or taking pictures of people, one of the things you don't have to worry about is like moving that focal point to exactly where you want, or you're not focus and recompose like you would do on a DSLR when you only had a limited number of focal points. Now with eye autofocus, you can be like, I'm going to focus on framing. I'm going to focus on the other technical aspects of it and not worried about where it's focused at because I'm watching that little box and that box is always right where I want it. Mm-hmm. So there's things that technology can do to help us, which is great. But at the same time, it's a practiced skill. Practice it, make it second nature. So that way you can focus on the important art pieces of the photo.
And be forgiving on yourself because still to this day, as much as I take pictures, I'll see something like yesterday. I saw a peregrine falcon come fly and land on a light post by my house, and I went to run in and grab my camera and turn it on and get like 2 of the 3 settings correct, and then forget completely about the other one, just because it looked good through the eyepiece. And when you get the picture up, it's like, oh, yeah, I forgot that those things move fast, and I didn't change the shutter speed at all. And the whole picture's blurry, right? And then you kick yourself in the butt.
1/60th or 1/80th of a second is probably not going to be the right shutter speed to capture
especially like when my camera was probably set up for the aurora lights, hopefully, and a falcon comes flying by. It just doesn't always work out for you.
No, not at all. And like, there's still, I don't do this professionally, in ebbs and flows of life. At times I take more photos than others. So like, amen. I get rusty. There's times where in the field taking a photo, I'm like, yeah, that setting was completely wrong. My keeper rate is not 100%. Yeah. Like my keeper rate is, as low as anybody else's, but it's about knowing that I have the knowledge to go out there and do it. And if I didn't get the shot the first time, I know I can go back out and get it a second time. And it's always learning. Early on, I did a lot of like browsing Flickr and looking for the photographers who kept their EXIF data in the photo, because then I could see, okay, that person was shooting at this ISO and this aperture. I understand why that picture looks that way because I know what they were shooting. I didn't know how they edited it. Like I didn't know what they did there, but the overall image, the composition, not from a framing perspective, but like all the components of the image I could understand because I could look at their EXIF data. So I would just spend time just browsing through photos, and you find photographers you like, and they're the ones who keep all the EXIF data in there, and you could go and look at all that data and see what was going on. And you could see, you could even see what lens they're shooting with. So it's not just about the exposure triangle. You could see, okay, they shot that at, 86 millimeters on a 70-200. Okay, that's interesting information to have. And you just start locking all that away in your head, because that helps you plan and think about maybe what lenses you want to have, how you want to use those lenses.
Well, I was going to say, when I first was looking for a camera, I asked you, like, what should I get? and mirrorless was just coming out, and I'm like, I'm gonna get this Sony mirrorless, and you're like, well, I remember you're like, well, that's dumb. And now mirrorless is everything, but it's way better the technology than when I first got it. But you helped me understand that I needed a certain type of camera body. I needed a lens. I was like, I need a lens. And you're like, you just need a lens that can do everything. And so you helped me understand, hey, this 18-105, or I think that's what it was, will really help you take multiple types of pictures, because lenses do matter. Camera bodies do matter.
They do, and I'll defend myself a little bit. So my view on cameras is that all cameras are good. You can shoot whatever you want, but if you have a community around you that is taking pictures, and you're just getting into photography, choose something that's similar to what they're shooting with, because they know how those cameras work. They can help you with the menu settings. They can help you with all those pieces. You bought a Sony. We were all Canon shooters, and I'm like, I don't know what menu option to choose. I don't know how that works.
Neither did I for a long time. It was quite confusing, actually.
So I always just recommend whoever you're going to go and take pictures with, choose similar gear. If you don't have gear now, right? If you're looking to buy gear, it doesn't matter if it's Nikon, Canon, Sony, even Lumix, Panasonic, like whatever other people are using around you, then look at that same type of gear, because they're going to be the community that helps you. And
like you were saying a little bit earlier, when I went out in the beginning and we were with everybody, I'd ask them, what are you shooting? Like, what's your ISO? What's your aperture? What's your, all that kind of thing. And to this day, I still do that every once in a while. I'm set up for what I feel like is correct and looks good in my camera. But after a few shots, I'll be like, hey, what are you shooting at right now? And see if I'm even in the ballpark or if we're totally different. And then maybe I'll switch it up just to give myself options when I go back to edit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like part of the advantage of going out with a group of people is being able to share that knowledge, and also they think differently than I do.
Yeah, that's true too.
So it's they're looking to capture something in a different way than I'm looking to capture it, and it broadens my horizons around like, oh, okay, that is a different way to think about it. I'm going to try that as well.
Mm-hmm. And don't be afraid to copy. Like if I see somebody in a spot, I'm like, what are they doing? And I kind of go over there. I'll wait till they're done shooting, and then I'll give it a shot too and be like, okay, that's cool. I didn't think about getting on the ground and shooting through, these rocks or these flowers or whatever it might be in the way. Or
right. So something that adds a frame to the photo that you weren't thinking of. Yeah.
So what are some of the most rewarding or maybe even challenging, you could go either way, parts about photography for you?
Well, right now, the most challenging part is time.
Yeah.
Just in a busy stage of life. But the other piece is, for me, the most challenging part is being able to see, like, walk up onto a subject from one direction and being able to see a different photo than just the way that I'm walking up onto it, right? Like the idea of being creative around, okay, that's a subject. How do I want to move? Where do I want to be? Do I want to go low? Do I want to go high? Do I want to be closer, farther? Like those are the challenging aspects for me, is really that creative framing of a photo and how to process and think through that, like live out in the field. That's where I get the challenge from now when I do get the opportunity to go out.
So what's most rewarding then?
When you get the shot.
Yes.
When you get the shot, you're on your computer and you're like, that's the shot I wanted. I took 300 shots and that's the shot I wanted right there. Yep. I have ideas for some photos that I want to do that we'll see. If like they're very specific, like I need a very windy day down by the lake with high waves and that kind of thing. Like, but I have things I want to get done, and so I have a checklist. And so working through that checklist would also be very rewarding, being able to get a specific shot here and there.
I kind of want to ask some questions about that checklist, but before I do, you had one of those, I would say, shots. It was put into the Capturing Kenosha calendar last year of the lighthouse. It's Had the fog behind it. I believe it was one of the winter pictures.
Yep, it was January. It was the January shot. It was that was from the polar vortex, which was January 2020, I believe. Right, that was right before the world shut down. And it was polar vortex, so the air temperature was like negative 28 or 30
so
that
balmy.
day. So it was nice and warm, and wind chill was in the negative, like near negative 50 or something like that. And it was one of those things where like I don't know what the lakefront's going to look like, but I know that this opportunity doesn't come around very often, and so I bundled up, got up for sunrise, which I don't remember what time that was, in the end of January, and went down to take a photo. I wasn't the only one down there.
Of course not.
There was like two others. I was the one that spent the most time outside the car, at least at that time.
What, 3 minutes?
It was about 5 minutes at a time. Real quick, like side note on that, the hardest part is when the cold starts getting through the bottom of your boots. So once the cold, because you're standing on ice a lot of the time and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so even though I'd go back to the car to warm up and that sort of thing, once that cold seeps in through the bottom of the boots, like they're like
to the bone.
You're just you're done soon because you can't keep your feet warm. But it was, I was there before the sun was coming up, thinking about the shot. I was over on the like the water plant side of the whatever you'd call
lighthouse.
Yeah, the lighthouse area.
Pier.
The pier. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I was like, okay, this is the shot I want because I knew what angle. There's an app I use on the phone that tells me like where the sun is gonna, sunrise, sunset.
That's
that
important.
Sort of thing. It is when you're trying to take a picture of a sunrise or a sunset, knowing where it's actually going to be.
Yeah.
And so I was planning the shot, knowing that there was a lot of like fog or haze coming off of
the
Lake
lake.
Michigan, and that only happens when it gets really cold. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of an excessive amount that day because of how cold it was. So the whole goal was to try to capture that the cold of that day in a photo with hopefully, because I didn't know at the time, hopefully some color from the sunrise, right? There's always, whenever you're doing the sunrise or sunset, there's a lot of hope that's involved because you never know. You never know exactly what it's going to look like. And maybe there's people who can predict that far better than I can.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are. But that was the whole thing. So it was, I knew my gear would work out in the cold. There's a little bit of like getting it adjusted so that way there's no condensation or anything like that. So you have to plan a little bit ahead of time to make sure that things will work and not have condensation on lenses and that sort of thing. But there's not a lot of prep. Like your camera's just going to work in the cold. Like don't overthink it. Just go out and take photos.
Actually, it only works for so long in the cold. If that cold,
yeah. I mean, I wasn't out there.
The battery starts to die. And
I wasn't out there for hours.
Yeah, no.
So yeah, no one was out there for hours. But then I just like at one point I just laid down on the snow because I had the specific picture I wanted to get, and the sun came up and I was able to grab a few. I look back and I'm happy with the photos. Like I think they're really good. But there's always a little bit of the self-critic, right? And I'm like, okay, if I would have moved over here a little bit, or like I could have taken this shot at a different angle. But quite honestly, after a few minutes out in the cold, it just got hard to think. Yeah. Like it was cold. It was really cold. Yeah. But I'm really glad I did it. Like that's a shot where like I'm glad I made the effort to go out. I had like 5 layers on, and it was at points hard to operate the camera because I had thick gloves on, and then I would take a thick glove off and then have like a thin glove on. Like it was cold.
Yeah, Mike Middleton made me go out this last winter in one of those same kind of conditions. And I got one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken from that day. But, man, I questioned what I was doing with my life at points. Like, how did I get talked into this? And in the end, I'm glad I did it as well. But I totally understand all the things you're talking about. Just the elements can be brutal sometimes. just quickly, are there any kind of bucket shot? You kind of listed like there's a shot or two that you have on your mind.
Yeah, so there's some reasonable ones, right? So there's down by the lakefront here in Kenosha, there's like an observation area where there's kind of like a bump out that's like a semicircle. And when the waves come at a certain angle, when the wind is blowing a certain way and that kind of thing, and there's big waves, they splash up vertically right there. So while I'm not a big fan of selective color photos, there's this photo I want to do with most likely my daughter wearing a bright yellow raincoat, standing right in the middle of that semicircle with a big splash of wave coming up. And it would look like selective color to an extent, but it wouldn't be.
Explain that selective color.
So selective color is like a black and white photo where then like there's just the famous one is like from Schindler's List with like the red coat or that sort of thing. I'm just not, that's not my style. That's not how I'm going to choose to edit something. But this photo would be like a pseudo selective color because there would be this yellow raincoat in the midst of what would be like gray from the concrete and just the gray sky and the water. So that one's been on my list for several years. My daughter's on board, but there just hasn't been like the right opportunity to go take it. You really need like the right windy, stormy day, where it's not, too cold, and availability. Like I need to be around,
and she does too. She's an adult now.
She is. So like, that's a shot. I started a series that I wanted to put together, and it was American. Think of it like American vehicles, but like from a different perspective. So like I have a shot of a Union Pacific train engine that from like I was able to get in front of it. It was no longer in use, and so it was on like a track that's no longer in use. This was a completely safe photo, but I was able to like elevate the camera and myself where I'm like dead center height wise and left to right of this train engine. And I think it's kind of an interesting shot to do as a series. And so I did a similar shot of like a fire engine here in Kenosha. And so like, I want to go and like find these different types of, not just cars, but like these big American vehicles that we use and have this kind of series of shots of them. It's not like, for some people, it's not gonna be very artistic. I thought it could make like a cool coffee table photo book kind of thing. Right. So that's a series I wanted to do. A dream shot that I don't know that I'll ever do is the Northern Lights in Greenland.
Yeah, I'm with you. Or Finland, no, Iceland. Sorry.
Yeah, or Iceland. Yeah. So those are a couple. I would love to do a dream trip. We've talked about it some. Would be like a 4 or 5 day off-road Jeep trip in the Rockies.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of paths out there to go get shots that people just don't get because they're not willing to make the effort to go get them. And we're talking camping and having to have all of our batteries with us. I'm like, it's a lot of work to go do that stuff. But to get some pictures that you're just not going to get unless you go and intentionally make the effort to do it. So those are kind of the short list. I'd love to go shoot some different sporting events and some things like that to get some shots. But like, yeah, those are the short list for now.
Just kind of one final question. What do you do with your pictures?
So ideally print them and hang them. I used to have a photo printer that unfortunately died. That's a long story. But back then I would just print a photo just to print it. There's something about seeing the photo on paper and being able to hang it on the wall, even temporarily. I recommend that to everybody who gets into photography. Print your photos. If you don't want to buy a printer, that's fine. Even if you just start with printing them at Costco or Walmart, like you'll get pretty unhappy with those prints in relatively relatively quickly, the better you get at taking pictures. But there's other places to order prints from that are more high quality.
Mm-hmm.
But hang them, give them to people for like as gifts.
Yeah.
Like do something with it. Like it's art that you've created and it should be seen. Everyone can go buy these posters and pictures from Hobby Lobby or Michael's or wherever. And like some of them are really cool, but they're not unique. They're something that anybody can go buy. Where like, I have photos that you can't go buy them anywhere because they're just mine. Yeah. And put a frame up in your house and rotate the picture out every month or every 2 months or whatever it is. Give them away to friends, whatever you can do with it, like just get it out there. And if people only take it because they're being nice and they hang it up for a week and then take it down, fine. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Like the fact that you're just getting it out there for people to see, is what's important, I think. So they're like leaving everything digital, I don't think is the end all be all for photography nowadays. It's getting it tangible and getting it, hung on a wall or in a place where people can enjoy it.
I was going to say one of the hardest things for me in the beginning was what to do with my pictures. And it took me a really long time to be confident enough to put it online and Capturing Kenosha or Wisconsin Wildlife or whatever Facebook groups I was on. But the other things that I was encouraged to do, every once in a while, some of these print companies will give you magnets for $1 or $2 for your pictures, or create a book for your year. I know one of our buddies does that and puts it on his table for people to just walk in on and look at and be like, oh, these are cool. And then he could be like, yeah, I took those. And then starts conversation. So I totally agree. If you just leave it on your computer and nobody ever gets to see it except for you, I mean, that's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's meant for everyone to enjoy as well.
Yeah, it gets back to that idea that I mentioned at the beginning of the gift of photography. Right? If you get confident enough where you think you're taking quality pictures, share that with people.
Mm-hmm. Well, Chris, I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule to join us and allowing the listeners to get to know you a little better. It's kind of really what this whole podcast is about, Capturing Kenosha podcast. And so we just appreciate your time. So thanks.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Till next time, everyone, I encourage you to get out there and capture Kenosha.